What does it mean to be a local law firm invested in your community?
It means that we're right here serving our neighbors.
It means you can call us 24/7.
Or walk into one of our 4 offices in Manatee and Sarasota County and meet us in person.
We are not a call center in another state. Our offices are here along the Sun Coast. We live and work right here where you live and work, and we give back to our community as often as we can. That's what it means to be a local law firm invested in our community. Reynolds Law, because injuries are personal.
It is a new year and a good time to think back to all the things that may have changed in our lives and our households. Well, because many of those things impact our insurance needs, it's also a good time for a checkup. In today's Injuries Are Personal with Reynolds Law, attorney Carl Reynolds is here to help us with an auto insurance checkup. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
I don't know if I put this on the top 10 list of fun things I want to do, but maybe a checkup will save me some money. So I've decided to get excited about this.
Right.
Saving money is always fun. What type of things should we kind of stop and think about when we're analyzing our insurance needs?
Well, if you're like most of us, you haven't looked at your policy probably in at least the last year, unless you've been fortunately in an accident, and then you're forced to look at it. So the good time to look at a policy is well before you need it. And so this is a good time as we're getting into New Year's resolutions and things. Come up with a plan for your insurance. So you ought to look at your auto insurance policy. First, you got to know what you're paying.
Right.
Okay. And then it's a good idea to shop it around. Now, I know people are loyal, but I'll tell you, your insurance companies aren't near as loyal back. If there's an accident or if the claim, they'll increase those rates right away. So you ought to shop it around. Good rule of thumb is at least once a year. So we're starting the new year. This is a good time to do it. But you got to make sure you're comparing apples to apples. You got to know what coverage you have, and you need to know what kind of coverage you really need.
What is the number one mistake in coverage that you see people repeatedly making?
The number one mistake is not getting enough coverage, particularly underinsured or uninsured motorist coverage. Okay, so when you look at your policy, you're going to have the statutory requirement, PIP or personal injury protection. It's $10,000 for everybody, so you've got that. But you can select a deductible. If you have robust health insurance, you may select a deductible because the health insurance will supplement that. Then you have property damage, which is also mandatory. That covers any damage to other vehicles that your negligence causes. The mandatory minimum is $10,000. Well, we've got some cars on the road that are worth much more than that, so you might need to bump that up. Usually they offer them in increments of 10, 25, 50, 100, that sort of thing. So you might look at something in the $25,000 range for that.
Let me interrupt you for just a second.
Sure.
Do I need to consider my family's income as part of this? Because am I at risk of being sued, so therefore I need more coverage? I have never understood that.
The short answer is yes.
Okay.
You are at risk of being sued. Insurance company is there to indemnify or to pay any debts that you owe, but only up to the limits you purchase. If you cause damage that exceeds the limits you purchased, you are on the hook for that difference.
Okay. And if they prove that you have that money, they can make it happen.
Oh, absolutely. They'll come after you, 100%. The other thing that happens is, let's say you only carry $10,000 in property damage and you cause $20,000 in damage to someone else's vehicle. Let's say they have insurance, collision coverage on their policy, which you probably ought to have if you have a later model vehicle, and that insurance company pays for the damage to the vehicle of $20,000. Well, your insurance will reimburse them 10, but they're still short 10. That insurance company typically will then file a lawsuit against you to recover that 10 that they paid out.
Got it.
And it'll put your credit through the ringer and everything else. So yes, you ought to cover enough insurance to make sure you're protected so you're not shelling out money out of your own pocket.
Okay, and I know we need to get to uninsured motorist coverage because that's a big one for you.
That's a big thing. So you can't get uninsured motorist coverage unless you have bodily injury coverage. Bodily injury coverage is not mandatory in Florida yet. We're on the precipice, but we're not there yet. So the insurance agent, if you just call and ask about pricing, they may leave that out just to try to quote you a lower price. But you don't want to leave that out because you've got to have uninsured motorist coverage, because statistics will tell you, and my experience will tell you, it's close to 50% of the cars out there have no bodily injury coverage or no insurance at all. And so you have a 50-50 shot of getting hit by someone having all these bills and injuries, and there's no compensation for it. So you've got to carry uninsured motorist coverage. My recommendation is carry as much as you can possibly afford. You have to get bodily injury in equal amounts. So if you buy $10,000 in UM, you have to have $10,000 in bodily injury or BI.
I love talking to you about this because you're talking from the approach that we all need to understand, not somebody selling it to me. The point that
I don't get a dime from the insurance company.
The point that the insurance company may not mention bodily injury to make their rate look lower ultimately hurts us. By then not being able to have uninsured motorists. So that's a huge takeaway and something I honestly have never really understood. Right.
So you need to carry bodily injury coverage, one, to protect you from any exposure, as we talked about, but also to protect your family, because it enables you to buy uninsured motorist coverage. And if you have more than one vehicle, you can stack that coverage, which you can multiply that coverage. So there is an incentive to insure multiple vehicles with one insurance company that allows you to multiply it or stack that
and maybe hopefully get a little bit of a discount.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. All right, I'm very motivated to go check my insurance policy now. Hopefully you are too. For more information about anything auto related or any legal questions, you can always go to injuriesarepersonal.com to find Carl. We'll be right back.
I'm the oldest of my parents' 6 children, and the oldest of my grandparents' 21 grandchildren. I was always taught to take care of my younger siblings and cousins, and to look out for them. That was the inspiration behind becoming a lawyer. It's my job to take care of my clients and to look out for their best interests, to serve them to the very best of my abilities.
If you've been injured and need a law firm to lean on, trust that we'll treat you like family, because injuries are personal.
Carl Reynolds Law.
Car after car, meal after meal. Hundreds of our Suncoast neighbors stopping by a very special event in Sarasota today to help put food on the table. More than 1 year into the pandemic, and we see local families who were once doing okay continue to find themselves in need. Some taking advantage of a food giveaway earlier today. If you were in the area, you might have seen the traffic this morning over at the Van Wezel in Sarasota. All Faiths Food Bank distributing food to, get this, about 280 Suncoast families. Volunteers gave out roughly 14,000 pounds of food this morning. They packed each car with all sorts of boxes of canned goods, frozen meats, fresh produce, milk, cheese, and eggs. All of that food was free of charge. Carl Reynolds is one of the sponsors. He says it's about the community coming together.
It's truly a community lift, and it just makes me proud to be part of this community. It's a clear need. One of the fellows came through, he said, you know, he just lost his job. It seems to be a common refrain here. A lot of people not able to find work, not able to provide for their families. So it's just a wonderful event, our partnership with ABC7 and All Faiths Food Bank to be able to provide meals for these families.
Our goal is to make sure that we're providing healthy, nutritious food. So maybe 50% to 60% of what you see here is going to be fresh fruit and vegetables and protein. You know, we just want to make sure people have a fully balanced meal and a healthy meal.
You saw the cars over her shoulder. That was Sandra Frank, CEO of All Faiths Food Bank. She says this morning's event was one of the largest ever. ABC7 was also a very proud sponsor of the event. Great to see our personalities out there giving back to the community. Same topic year after year. We see there is no shortage when it comes to need. ABC7's Chase Campbell reports every donation is helping to feed a local family.
We try to get out here early. Because I heard, you know, as growing up, you know, the early bird catches the worm. So we come out here to just get the food and also take some of the food that we get and share with people in our cul-de-sac.
For Mario Green, a trip to the All Faiths Food Bank distribution means food for not only him, but for those around him. He said it's important for him to give out this food his family is receiving because he's simply returning a favor.
Well, it's important to us because we've had people do stuff for us. So because people done things for us that were kind, you know, and thoughtful and considerate, we decided to do the same thing.
It was a common theme in the line for food at the Van Wezel Saturday morning. Those that were receiving the food were most excited to be able to get that food to others in their family.
It's just like, it's just making ends meet is just real tough. So it's just like anything, little bit helps. So
Carrie Gold said that distributions like this are an excellent way for her family to break up the struggle they so often go through.
I have food stamps, so it helps, you know, supplement those because my food stamp card amount is just so low that it's not able to help get me through the month.
Gold's and Green's stories were a lot like the stories you'll find in many of these cars, and today they're breathing a little easier. From Sarasota, I'm Chase Campbell, ABC7 your local station.
Mahatma Gandhi said, "The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others."
Growing up, my folks put it a bit more bluntly. They said it's not about you. They taught me life isn't about me. It's about others, how you treat others and how you help and serve others.
I guess you can say our law firm has really found itself over the years because it isn't about us, how big we are or how much money we win.
It's about you.
The people we serve.
It's about giving back to the community we love.
Reynolds Law, because injuries are personal.
Well, the season of giving is underway in Manatee County with the annual Empty Bowl event put on by the Food Bank of Manatee's Meals on Wheels Plus program.
It's a good one, and the weather couldn't have been better for a cup of soup today. Hey, and tomorrow it's going to be a little gloomy. And this is a tradition, really, here on the Suncoast, celebrating hunger relief and raising funds to help fill the need in Manatee County. ABC 7 is proud to partner with Meals on Wheels Plus of Manatee County for this event, and Reynolds Law is a sponsor of our efforts to help feed the hungry right here on the Suncoast.
There's a lot of folks who just don't have enough to eat, and it's shocking how many there are in our community that don't have enough to eat. So as we prepare for our Thanksgiving feast and Christmas meals and things, we need to be mindful of those who are less fortunate and have the opportunity to give back.
And there's time to do just that, give back. You and your family can get involved. It's easy. Tomorrow, more soup and more empty bowls, this time happening in Lakewood Ranch on Main Street for a drive-through event because of this expected weather to come. So just head over to our website, mysuncoast.com. We've got all the information you need to know right there for you.
Check out our hundreds of 5-star online reviews. Reynolds Law.
It is a pretty common sight to see people pulled over on the side of our roadways, maybe from a minor fender bender or a flat tire or the dreaded speeding ticket. But it is our job as drivers to move over and give them an extra lane of space. And today's Injuries Are Personal with Reynolds Law. Attorney Carl Reynolds is here live to explain how Florida's move over law is expanding. Great to see you.
Great to see you, Stephanie.
So we've talked about this before.
We have.
I see it flashed up on the FDOT signs all the time. So
right.
We advertise. Florida says move over.
Correct.
Practically nobody does it.
It's unfortunate, yes. We need to get better at it. So it's been in our face, and the state legislatures have tried to double down, and now they've added pretty much every situation where there's a vehicle on the side of the roadway. The law is move over. So if you see any vehicle with hazard lights on now, because that's been added. It used to be emergency personnel, it used to be sanitation, it used to be buses, that sort of thing.
Right.
Professionals typically. But now it's even normal John Q. public. If they're on the side of the road with hazards on, we're all supposed to move over a lane, or if it's impossible to move over a lane, slow down 20 miles an hour below the posted speed limit.
And that I see more. I do feel like people do slow down, you know, at least to make sure nothing's going to pull out in front of you or things like that. But this makes so much sense to me because originally I think you had said if it has flashing lights, you probably the law would make you move over. So you'd see someone on the side of the road and you'd have to think, wait, is this one of those where I have to move over? Just blanket it.
Right. Are those official lights or unofficial? Now it doesn't matter. It's a blanket approach. Anyone, any flashing lights, any disabled vehicle, move over.
There have been some absolutely horrible accidents in the past month or so from this very situation where someone had either had a disabled vehicle and was pulled over or was, you know, working with a law enforcement person and then gets hit.
And it's so unnecessary. But our national average is we lose 2 lives a day for people that are on the side of the road, emergency responders, either tow truck drivers or policemen, firefighters, and because people don't move over and they get hit because they're just trying to help somebody. So they're putting their lives on the line. So the least we could do is move over. Is it inconvenient? Sure. Is it going to add a couple seconds to our commute? Maybe, but come on, we're saving lives.
Of all the things that we do, you know, need to consider on the roads, this to me seems like one of the more obvious ones. You know, for one thing, we should be alert enough as we're driving anyway to see that something's over there.
Right.
And so we just needed to automatically trigger, oh, now I need to move over. Is this something that's more unique to Florida than in other places? Because I feel like Florida advertises this a lot.
No, we're the 17th state to have a blanket move over law like we've had where we add disabled vehicles. So I think other states struggle with this as well.
You know, and the problem is that you worry about swinging the pendulum too far. We don't want rubberneckers either, right? Where everyone's stopping and slowing down and causing huge traffic jams. But at the same time, we have to create the space. So just move over a lane or slow down to 20 miles below the speed limit if you cannot. But everyone else, you know, kind of flow through. The problem is when everyone stops to try to see what's going on, you see the wrecked vehicle and things, then it compounds the problem. But if we move the lane over, we're okay. And I think we're right in the middle of the number of states that have this law in the books, and hopefully we'll have proper enforcement and people will move over.
Right.
That's the goal.
Does the expanded law take effect immediately, or is that a delay till July 1 or January 1?
Oh, I didn't check I think it was signed in effective immediately. But
okay, I think you're right, because I've seen it put out there a little bit more. So now, just so everybody is clear, any law enforcement, let's go through the whole list. Tow trucks, what else?
Right, and even if there's a delay in the effectiveness of the law, it's just good practice to do it. So basically, any disabled vehicle on the side of the road, whether they have official lights, whether they have disabled lights, whether they're a regular
car, changing
vehicle,
a tire,
right. Sanitation, emergency roadside, anything like that with the flashing lights and things like that, just move over. One lane over, that's all we got to do. Or if it's impossible to move over, slow down to 20 miles an hour below the speed limit. Not 50 miles an hour below the speed limit, 20 miles below the speed limit.
Yeah, just to try to keep people safe when they're, you know, doing things to help each other out. So important, seems so simple, yet it's something that I don't think we've been real great at doing. So hopefully
we can be better.
We will get better at it. All right, for more information about any of your legal questions, you can go to Injuries Are Personal.
I'm often surprised how shocked folks are when I personally take their phone calls, especially on nights and on weekends. They tell me that a friend or a loved one used another firm and they never met their attorney, and in some instances, never even spoke to their attorney on the phone.
At Reynolds Law, that won't ever happen. Every client has direct communication with their attorney.
We aren't just faces on a billboard or a spokesman on this commercial. We are your lawyers, and we represent you personally. Reynolds Law, because when it comes to injuries, it's always personal.
Summer travel season, and many of us will be renting cars in one location or another. And at the rental counter, you typically get asked, do you need insurance? In today's Injuries Are Personal with Reynolds Law, attorney Carl Reynolds is here to help us understand rental car insurance coverage. I kind of panic when this happens.
I know.
Because you're like, if I say no, do they think I'm cheap and stupid?
Right,
If I say yes, am I paying for things I don't need? So help us understand what we should do.
Most of the time it's the latter. You're paying for something you probably don't need. If you have good insurance coverage on your personal vehicles and you rent a car, that insurance coverage does typically cover your rental car, okay? Especially if it's a replacement vehicle, it'll cover it. But even on vacation, it typically covers that rental car. In addition, a lot of times our credit cards that we use will provide additional insurance. So most of the time it's a sales tactic, and it's a way to upsell you, and you don't necessarily need it, although there is pressure when you're at the desk to get it, and you got a line of people behind you, and a lot of times we just mark it off as done. But you don't need it if you have robust insurance coverage on your personal vehicles.
Okay, so what part of our policy on our personal vehicles then covers a rental car vehicle?
Great question. So typically liability. The one issue is collision. It typically does not cover collision coverage if you are not replacing an insured vehicle with that rental vehicle. So if, for example, I have two vehicles, we go on vacation, the two vehicles are sitting in the driveway, they're perfectly drivable, and I rent a vehicle, that's not a replacement vehicle, I'm just renting a vehicle. Liability will follow me, but collision coverage wouldn't. So if I wreck that rental car, and it causes $5,000 of damage or whatever to the vehicle, I might end up owing that $5 grand because my personal auto insurance may not cover it.
So it'll cover the medical and the damages
of anyone I injure.
To anyone else. Okay, so is that a reason?
That may be a reason
to pick up collision coverage. Now, of course, we're all going to say, well, I'm not going to get in an accident in the rental car.
No one. Yes.
Okay. So if you really want to be safe, how is the value there if they say, well, you could get collision coverage? Because I've been offered that.
Right, and it depends on the company, right? It's
and their sales tactics.
And their sales tactics. Also, you want to check again the credit card they use, because sometimes your credit card will allow for some collision coverage on the rental vehicle. So it takes a little pre-planning to do, which it's not my strong suit, but if you make some phone calls and search around, you can find out whether or not it might cover it, and you may use, you know, your Amex instead of your Discover or something, depending on the insurance company. They might provide that insurance coverage and save you a few bucks.
And this is good to know, you know, not only for pre-planning, but if, you know, unfortunately something happens, before you dish out the cost of a bumper repair or whatever it is, check with your credit card company to see if there might be some help there.
100%.
All right, so while we're talking about vacation season, lots of us have family, friends coming to visit us. Hey, can I borrow your car? Can I borrow your car and just, you know, go to the beach for the afternoon? And then something goes wrong. How does that coverage work?
When we talked about it before on this show many times, a vehicle is a dangerous instrument. It's basically a weapon on wheels, and if you cause injury with that vehicle, as the owner, you're responsible. You're on the hook. So if, you know, if your nephew's out driving to the beach and he causes an accident, you're going to be on the hook as the owner of the vehicle. Now your auto insurance, because he's a permissive user, he's got permission to use the vehicle, will cover it. But if you don't have at least $500,000 of coverage on that, you as the owner are personally responsible up to $500,000. So let's say you have $250,000 of coverage. Well, that additional $250,000 under the law, if he really hurts somebody, you could be responsible for him. Might have to pay out of your own pocket. Now, if he has his own insurance policy, his own liability policy, even out of state, it typically will cover him using your vehicle as a permissive user.
Which he should, one would hope. So.
And I know it's weird saying, hey, do you have an insurance policy? But it might be a question you ask before he goes takes off. Do you have insurance policy? Who's your insurance company with? How much do you have? Type thing.
I think that's a pretty normal question, honestly. If I know that my policy is only going to cover to here, and especially if it's a significant borrow, you know, where you're multiple days increased risk as a result. I think it's good to know.
Higher speeds, is he going to be on the highways?
All those kind of things. Yep. Is it a teenager? Do I have to give him the car if he's a teenager? But no, these are all just important things to, I think, be aware of.
Well, interesting enough, rental cars wouldn't. So if he's a teenager, you can't get it. In fact, typically under 25, you can't get a rental car. So they know, based on statistics, that that age of drivers is they're high risk.
And I have a whole house full that would like to debate the fact that they shouldn't. Why can't I get a rental car? I'm 21 years old. But yeah, no, statistics have spoken, and the companies have made their decisions. So that just leads us all to make more careful decisions as well. So it's good to understand both the laws and the insurance rules. For more information about any legal questions, automobile related or otherwise, you can find Carl and his team by going to injuriesarepersonal.com. We'll be right back.
Even though we may not personally experience it or even see it on a day-to-day basis, there's folks struggling with hunger in our community, and it's heartbreaking. And so what we need to do is open up our hearts and open up our pocketbooks and try to give as much as we can, even if it's only a canned food here and there. And that's one thing that's really been reinforced to me by being involved with this experience, is that there's folks out there, you may not notice it and you may not see them on a day-to-day basis, but when we go to food distribution events and we see them coming through the lines, they're in tears because they weren't sure how they're going to feed their families that week. That's what makes it all worth it.
Local teachers are going above and beyond during these trying times.
So ABC 7 and Carl Reynolds Law are honoring these chalkboard champions with a chance to win $500.
But we need your help.
Go to mysuncoast.com/chalkboardchampions to nominate a teacher who is really making a difference.
And each month we'll deliver $500 to one teacher in Sarasota County and one teacher in Manatee County.
Go to mysuncoast.com and nominate your chalkboard champion today.
Most of us don't have a lot of experience with car crashes, but as a result, it's hard to know what to do or say when one occurs. In today's Injuries Are Personal with Carl Reynolds Law, attorney Carl Reynolds is here to explain why not saying much of anything may be very valuable advice, and literally valuable.
Correct.
Okay, so an accident happens.
Yes, ma'am.
Why is it so important that we literally don't even say you're sorry, even if we are?
I know, and it's sad that that's the world we live in, but you got to treat it almost like your Miranda rights. Anything you say can and will be used against you, okay? So
a lot of people say, yeah, but it's hearsay. You heard me say something, it's hearsay.
Right.
It shouldn't be admissible.
She said.
Under evidentiary law in Florida, a party that's to the lawsuit, any statements they make that's against their interest are admissible, whether it's hearsay or not.
Okay.
Also, if it's made soon after the event, it's called an excited utterance, and it's also admissible. So there are hearsay exceptions that allow these statements to be used in court. That's why you just really don't want to say anything until you've had a chance to process it, to realize, am I really saying something that's accurate?
Okay, or saying something that admits fault.
Right, and I'll give you an example. I represent a gentleman who was waiting at a red light. There was a gentleman coming the opposite direction, okay? There is no designated turn signal. My client had a red light. He's 99.9% sure the car coming the other way had a red light because both had the red light. That means cross traffic had a green light. Car entered the intersection from the cross traffic. The guy hit him, both cars ran into him, totaled his car. He said it's this guy's fault because he ran the red light, but this guy got out and said, I'm sorry, I wasn't looking directly at the light. My insurance will pay for it if it's my fault. And because he said that, even though my client was certain he had the green light because he had the red light, that means the other guy would have had a red light. His insurance company got wrapped into it, and at mediation, they had to make a business choice to offer some money because those statements would be used against him, and there were no other independent witnesses. So
got it.
That's why you just want to not say anything like that, even though our instinct as a good human being is to say, I'm sorry, I apologize.
Sure.
Just be careful because it will be used against you.
How does it get corroborated, though? You know, like, okay, I said I was sorry, but maybe how do you know that is what I meant, or how do you know I saw it? Like, I feel like it turns into a little he said, she said.
It is, but unfortunately, you just don't know what a jury might decide. If you say, I'm sorry, well, are you accepting some sort of culpability, right? Also, if you followed up by saying, I wasn't paying attention, or, hey, my insurance will cover it, then it seems to suggest that you're not sure if you were in violation of the law, and therefore you have some exposure. So you just want to avoid those things like your speed. Unless you were staring at your speedometer, I always tell my clients, never say anything about their speed, about time, okay, how soon it was, everything, because everything happens so fast. I have clients who say, I was waiting at this red light for 2 minutes. Well, that red light doesn't stay red for 2 minutes. There's no way. The truth is they're probably there for 2 seconds. It just seemed like 2 minutes. Distance, how close things were. So it gets messed up in our minds, so you just want to avoid giving those sorts of specifics.
Okay, so the answer as to what we should say is pretty much as little as humanly possible. You know, acknowledge it happened, exchange information.
Correct.
And then,
especially to other parties that are there at the scene. Now, when the police come, there's a police report privilege. Anything you say to the police is confidential and not admissible, and there is no hearsay exception. So feel free to tell the police whatever, but when you talk to other people involved in the wreck, they can then use your words against you, and their insurance company can use your words against you.
Now, the police report, confidential, though, the policeman will write it down, and then does that become admissible evidence?
It does not.
I did not know that.
Yes.
Okay, so the police report is not part of what you do.
We use it in prior to filing lawsuit because it gives an outline of what happened, and a professional law enforcement official put together what he or she saw or thinks happened. But unless they witnessed it, it is all hearsay, not admissible in court in a civil case.
So hold your tongue until you see the police officer.
Correct. And call the police.
Right.
That's important.
Yeah, that is
because sometimes someone will say, hey, I'm sorry, it's my fault. You don't call the police because you believe them, and they'll change their tune later, and you don't have an independent witness corroborate what they said, and then you're stuck with the bill yourself.
Okay, lots of good advice. For more information about how to handle car crashes or any other legal situations, you can find Carl and his team by going to injuriesarepersonal.com. We'll be right back.
We live in and love our beach community. Whether you're in a boat, at the beach, or in a car, we want you to be safe. Carl Reynolds Law, because injuries are personal. Visit us at injuriesarepersonal.com.
A troubling national statistic came out this month. Car crash deaths dramatically increased this year, even though the pandemic reduced driving amounts. The National Safety Council reports more than 38,600 fatal crashes nationwide. That is the most since 2007. In today's Injuries Are Personal with Carl Reynolds Law, attorney Carl Reynolds is here to talk about what might have contributed to this very sad and scary statistic. Well, if we're driving less, why are we getting worse at it, I think is the question that seems to come out here.
Sure.
And people are talking about how psychology may have a lot to do with it.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about that.
Well, I think first, let's just deal circumstantially. You're going to have less cars on the road. So because of less cars, people tend to drive a little faster and maybe be less concerned about safety, not wearing seat belts. So you've got those factors. So you got to add in speed and lack of use of seatbelts, and that's been cited throughout these tests and reports indicating that speed is a factor and lack of use of seatbelts. And then the third factor, dealing with the circumstance of the pandemic and dealing with the stress of it and everything, is you also have additional alcohol use and drug use. So you put those three together, and it's a very dangerous cocktail.
It is a very dangerous combination, and to me it seems like since 2007, think about all the great advances we've made, right? Seatbelt laws are tighter, airbags are better, all things that should keep us alive, our cars are safer, but yet decisions we make throws all that out the window.
Absolutely, and the problem is that trend is continuing into 2021. So 2020, maybe we could understand based on the pandemic and people speeding and dealing with the stress, but that stress has not decreased and not led to less fatalities, but an actual increase in fatalities going into 2021. We don't have all the statistics, obviously, we still have some time left, but once it's all tallied, we're going to have one of the biggest years again since 2007. It'll be even bigger than 2020 with respect to the amount of fatalities. And it's something very avoidable. And where we see it often too is one telltale sign is single vehicle accident and fatalities. So we're not talking about others driving into others, but it's just single vehicles driving too fast for conditions, not wearing a seatbelt or otherwise intoxicated, and running off the road or running into objects and resulting in, unfortunately, a death.
And not paying attention, I would think, especially with single vehicle crashes.
Correct.
Seems like it would be a factor. I know, to me, it seems like, we know our roads are crowded, especially here, but it just seems like there's always something or someone on any given trip we go out where people are weaving in and out, where people are cutting people off, where somebody's honking and gesturing, I don't feel like there's the patience of driving that maybe they're used to do. And I wonder if that's where the pandemic psychology comes in. We're an irritated group of people right now.
Correct, and throw into it, in no small measure, the politics of it too, and how divisive that can be. And what happens is people who might otherwise be cordial and civil when we're sitting at a table, when you get behind that vehicle, sometimes the worst side of us comes out, and we've seen it being played out. And that's a dangerous instrument. That's 3,000 to 5,000 pounds going down the road and can cause serious havoc. So I think you're right. I think people are less civil. I think they're more aggressive. I think their frustrations with whatever's going on in life between the pandemic, politics, the inflation, and whatever else plays out on our roads, and it's a very dangerous combination, and we're seeing it play out in the statistics. So we need to get back to some civility, some kindness, let people merge, that sort of thing. Yeah. We're missing that. I agree.
I think, it's interesting in 10, 20, 50 years when we look back at pandemic impacts, I'm not sure we would have ever thought that car crash deaths would have been such a prevalent one.
I don't think we would think that, but I think if we step back and we go back and study this pandemic has impacted all aspects of society. So I don't think it would be a surprise that it will also impact our driving and accidents and things like that, because it's impacted everything. And I think we can't overstate how bad it's been, how pervasive it's been, and how interrupting it's been, and it's still an issue. We're still not out of it. We're still dealing with cases coming up, and people still being afraid to come out of their homes and interact with people. And so hopefully we can get to a point of, we keep talking about back to normal.
Whatever that may be, right?
May be, yeah.
That's
hopefully, for sure, we can get these deaths down. So just drive safer out there, drive slower, wear your seatbelt.
Yep.
and don't be so aggressive. If someone cuts you off, it's okay.
All those things we were doing
Live to
better
fight
in
another day.
2007, we need to
Correct.
go back to doing better, because we definitely, this is something we can do something about.
Yes.
We can be
Right.
better
We can
drivers.
start today.
And we can reduce that car crash statistic. So hopefully we can all do that together for the new year. For more information about any of your legal questions, you can go to injuriesarepersonal.com. We'll be right back.
Speak to an actual lawyer 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Few things more precious to us as a community than the safety of our children, especially on their way to and from school. In today's Injuries Are Personal with Carl Reynolds Law, attorney Carl Reynolds is here to talk about new legislation to make sure Suncoast school zones and those all across the state are safe. Great to see you.
Great to see you, Stephanie.
So school zones are hard, and I'm going to come at this from both sides. As a driver, literally could be the most annoying thing, and we all know it, right?
Right.
As a parent, as a human, as a community member, we understand why we are forced to slow down to 15 and literally crawl in many locations.
Correct.
So where's the problem? Do people just not follow the rule? Do we need stiffer penalties? What is the state discussing?
Yes, both of those. Part of it is enforcement, right? I drove through 4 different school zones on the way to the studio this morning.
I
okay,
believe it.
so you would have to have a police officer stationed at each one of those school zones during the entirety of the school zone period.
Which is a couple hours.
Both morning and then afternoon, right? And
Right.
so we just don't have the police force to dedicate to police every single school zone to make sure that people are following the rules.
Did you see violators? I have to ask. Or are people behaving?
Yes, I think this morning, I have to think specifically this morning compared to other times, but a lot of times what you'll see is people going 40-50 miles an hour right up to the last second, and then yeah, exactly, or trying to speed up before it quite gets to the end of that school zone, and that's especially true when the lights are triggered or the timing's triggered right at the beginning before it really gets busy. But you got to worry. You've got students coming in early, you've got students coming in late. Same thing with leaving school. You've got crossing guards, and we just have to be aware, and we have to slow down. And so that's what the state legislature is really considering, how they can enforce that and how they can fix that.
Because penalties and also rules did already go up this year. I know
Correct.
we went to the hands-off all devices in a
That
school
is correct.
zone.
We talked about that.
We did talk about that, and I think all of us do have to consciously remember that, because I don't sometimes I am making a phone call, and I know that that's not something that we should be doing. But penalties also increase. Is Florida worse at this as we are at so many things
Yes,
on the roads?
we
Okay,
are.
again, why are we bad at this?
I think part of it's enforcement. Some of it's education. Some of the school zones don't have the bright flashing lights, or they may not always work, and you have to be aware the signs do say the timing of when you're supposed to slow down. But I think a big thing that the state legislature is considering right now, and it's passed the Senate, and there's a House bill as well. House bill, it's 189. Looked it up here, and they're looking for photo enforcement, video enforcement of speed, and this is a new thing for Florida. A few states have it. Most states have outlawed photo enforcement
Because of reliability?
Just I think as Americans, we hold on to we want the human factor involved. The same thing with umpires in baseball, right? And things. We kind of hold on to that.
Right.
In Europe, it's utilized everywhere. Photo enforced speed is used, but here in the United States, we've been reluctant. But Florida, I think, is about to jump on that, but specific to school zones.
And to me, if you were going to do it, that is the location it makes sense, because not a single one of us is going to feel good about speeding through a school zone.
Correct.
Especially if something tragic happens. If we do move to something like photo enforcement in a school zone, how does that change the legality of it all? I mean, we know those red light cameras have been nothing but a big debate.
Correct, and it's going to that debate is going to continue with this, okay? But the way it's going to work is, I think we're going to model it a lot over like our sister state, Georgia. They've implemented this
In zones?
in school zones, and it's going to have a certain
fine affixed to it. It'll be a fairly modest fine compared to a normal speeding fine, okay? You won't get points assessed on your license, so it won't affect your points, and it cannot be utilized. It won't be considered a moving violation, more like almost like a traffic ticket, so it can't be used when they utilize information for insurance rates.
So kind of like a red light ticket, but here's my only question about this. It's a school zone. Let's not go light on people. Are they proposing a lighter system because of the photo part? We want to make sure we're good?
That's the issue. The penalties haven't changed. If a police officer's there with a radar gun and you get pinched, so to speak, no, you're going to get the full weight of the law thrown against you. This is only for photo enforced enforcement.
Maybe an additional step?
Well, it's an additional step, or when that police officer isn't there with the radar gun and just the crossing guards there, and all they can do is growl at you because you're speeding through, but they have no authority to do anything. Well, now you're going to have a camera that's going to catch your license plate, and you're going to get something in the mail, and you're going to be paying. And there is an escalating penalty for subsequent offenses.
I would hope so. Listen, it is a busy time of year. We're all hustling and bustling, but we can't do it at the expense of our kids in school zones, and the Florida legislature is taking that on. For more information about any of your legal questions, you could always go to injuriesarepersonal.com. We'll be right back. I did.
Our greatest joy is serving the community in which we live.
Don't choose our firm just so we can boast how big we are.
Or tell everyone of how many millions of dollars we've won for our clients.
At Carl Reynolds Law, you won't be just another feather in our cap.
Choose Carl Reynolds Law so we can treat you like you're part of our family.
And so we can continue to give back to the community we love.
Because injuries are personal, Carl Reynolds Law.
One of the more frustrating driving situations occurs almost every day for many of us. You pull up to a four-way stop and we all start waving at each other as who should go next. But like everything on our roads, there is a right and wrong way to proceed. In today's Injuries Are Personal with Carl Reynolds Law, attorney Carl Reynolds is here to remind us of an often broken rule of the road. Four-way stops.
Yes.
There must be something in that driver's ed manual that nobody remembers as to how to proceed. And I love that your teenage son notices this and was like, why does nobody know what to do?
Yes, it's actually codified by statute, but I've modified my schedule in the morning. So my oldest is a freshman in high school, and so I've now taken him to school, and I enjoy those few minutes we have together and kind of catch up on what's going on.
Wait till he drives you to school.
Exactly. Yeah, that'll be. I'm not ready for that. I'm not ready for that. But on his way to high school, we encounter four-way stops, 4 of them, and many times we'll come up and there's a lot of, like you said, a lot of hand gesturing, a lot of flashing of lights. There's waiting, and he asked me a very poignant question. Well, Dad, how do you know who goes first? And I guess he's trying to learn on the rules of the road and things, and it got me realize I better be careful of how I drive because he's watching my every move. And so we looked up the statute, and it is in driver's ed, and we're all taught it, but you know, let's face it, it's been a long time since some of us have been in driver's ed and have looked at any statutes whatsoever. So the rule of the road is if you arrive at a four-way stop and 2 or more cars arrive simultaneously, it's the car to the right that has the right-of-way. They go first.
Okay, so then you have to sit there and think, okay, I'm on the right, I go first.
Correct.
But the problem I've always noticed is while we're thinking that, then people start making hand gestures. So what happens legally if I said go and then they went and then we collided or they collided with somebody else? How do you have that discussion, and who's at fault when you start doing that?
Becomes a mess.
I bet.
And it becomes a he said, she said, and it'll depend on witnesses on who arrived first. There's also potentially some culpability to the person who waved the person through. I mean, it could be a mess.
And is that your mess, or does the police officer sort that out?
The police officer attempts to. And, and he or she will issue a moving violation if he can establish one. But those moving violations have to hold up in court beyond a reasonable doubt. So if there's many police reports that come across my desk where the investigating officer could not determine who is at fault based on
conflicting stories, no independent witnesses, no traffic cameras that recorded the issue, and so no moving violation citations issued.
So what's your legal advice when we're at a four-way stop? Is it a bad idea to get involved with a little you go, I go, because I may end up in trouble?
Right. I think communication is important, especially if you don't want everyone to sit there at a stalemate for 5 minutes waiting to see who will go. And it's funny that we're talking about this today, because this morning, that's exactly what happened this morning. We had 3 of us who got there at the same time. I'm looking to the person to the right, looking to go. They're flashing the person across the way to go, and it took a while. It took a while. It seemed like it took a long time. And that's another issue. What if you arrive directly opposite of each other at the same time? No one's to the right necessarily. You're both to the right of each other.
And there's a left turn or something?
If someone's turning, they should yield to the person who's going straight through.
Straight goes first.
Straight goes first. If you're obviously both turning right, there's no conflict. If one of you is turning left, they should yield to, always the person turning left should yield to the people going straight or turning right.
The Chicago driver in me usually just tries to gun it and turn. So.
And there's some good things that come from that, and that we don't wait because it causes a backflow behind you. You can have, especially around the high school where I dropped my son off, you can wait there for 10 minutes in traffic. So, but to your point, you can communicate, you can flash your lights quickly. What you don't want to do, and we see this oftentimes, especially with inexperienced drivers, is you don't want to race up to the stop bar and try to get there first, or stop way short of the stop bar but said, hey, I stopped first so then I can gun it through.
Go. Right. Yeah, and I think too, the thing seems to be, if you're going to make a move, you have to just be constantly checking around you. Does this tend to kick off a lot of accidents? Do you see a lot of cases where stop signs are probably part of the issue?
So my specialty is injury law, and so if you're dealing with a four-way stop issue where vehicles were stopped and then they go, not a lot of injuries occur because we're talking about very low speed impacts, right? The issues I deal with stop signs is where someone just blows it all together, and then a significant T-bone type accident occurs. But no, I'm sure the courts are full of situations, and insurance companies are burdened with those fender benders where people go simultaneously. We just got to practice defensive driving. That's the smart thing to do. So if you see that you're about to come up to a stop bar at the same time as someone else, it might be worth backing off a little to let them stop first, and then you come up. Then there's no question. You go first, and you got there first, and go.
All right. Well, I like the fact that your son's asking questions. Tell him to keep asking, because I think there's lessons we can all learn from these. For more information about any legal questions on the road or otherwise, you can go to injuriesarepersonal.com. We'll be right back.
Gandhi said, the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. Growing up, my folks put it a bit more bluntly. They said it's not about you. They taught me life isn't about me. It's about others, how you treat others, and how you help and serve others. I guess you can say our law firm has really found itself over the years, because it isn't about us, how big we are or how much money we win.
It's about you,
the people we serve.
It's about giving back to the community we love.
Reynolds Law, because injuries are personal.